I wanted to hop on and I want to do like a impromptu kind of analysis and explanation of what I think is going on with the DLC for Elden Ring because I think there's a lot of drama going on right now, and I don't necessarily think it's in bad regards or it's in misregard. Um because a lot of people are saying that the Elden Ring DLC is too hard. And I think a lot of people have a hard time explaining what's actually going on, and they are just trying to explain how they feel as to what's going on. And I feel like too hard is a phrase that you can easily back yourself up on a hill. Now, the problem is in a game that's at this point kind of unfortunately known for its difficulty, even though the game should be known for a lot more than just that. Which now, because of Elden Ring and how mainstream it is, it's starting to become that way. But anyways, besides the point, the main thing with these games have always been kind of the difficulty, um, and the core factor of dying being a part of the game, and you having to learn something every time that you die to get a kill can kind of prove that point. However, I think in this regard, with the DLC, I think people are really kind of confusing the two things. Because there is one particular boss. And if you've gotten to it, you know what boss I'm talking about. There's only one boss really where I'm like, I guess two. I guess two. Where the mechanics are insane, right? One of them, I think they're genuinely gonna have to nerf. As far as just damage output, but I don't think the combat and the gameplay is inherently difficult. I think the scaling is the reason why it's difficult. Like it's not that like I'm thinking about all the bosses. It's not that they have impossible to dodge move sets. Like all of them, once you learn them, like Midra. I'm not gonna give any more examples than just the first name. If you don't know who I'm talking about, then I'm not gonna spoil anything. But there's a couple of combos that Midra throws at you that you're like, whoa, holy shit. You're like, there's no way I can. And then you end up figuring out a way to dodge that. Same thing with the Avatar. Same thing with, the Twin Knight. Those guys, they have a lot of persistent combos where it's like 5 to 6 to 7 swings coming out in one go. But once you figure out the dodge and the rolling, it's really not that bad. The problem is when they're doing a 7 move combo, and it's like, say with the Twin Knight, like it's like slash slash slash, and then like a big one. The big one doesn't even fucking really matter half the time because the slashes do so much damage. And I know what you're thinking, right? Like, oh, there's new currency for that. They have the new Erdtree blessings. Bro, I'm at like level 14 or 15, and I'm still getting like half of my health just chopped off by regular attacks by enemies. Like, enemies around the world, they do a shitload of damage. It's insane, dude. I think it's not that it's hard because of difficulty. Like it's difficulty because of scaling. And so this leads into a video that Moist Critical or Charles or Penguin Zero just made, and I wanted to react to it because I'm curious what he has to say about this topic, because I really don't understand why everyone's bitching and moaning about how it's too hard, but they're not just talking about the simple fact that everything just does a little bit, like especially in certain like circumstances with certain moves. Like you can tell in combos when you fight a boss, you're like, that did that much damage? Like I've heard so many people say that, but I don't think they're directly correlating that that's a reason the difficulty is here and it feels harder than other content, right? So, I'm curious what he has to say here. The video is just called Too Hard.
Hope you got your umbrellas out because it's about to start raining with my tears. I'm going to go on a passionate rant here, and it might ruffle a few feathers, but you know what? Facts don't care about your feelings, and I'm about to start spitting
That's right.
those.
That's right.
There are so many people whining about Elden Ring DLC being too hard. Let that sink in for a moment. For actual years now, one of the most prevalent memes in the gaming community is how bad game journalists are at the games they review. So the community has constantly dropped trouser and taken a shit on them anytime they mention the difficulty of a game being too hard. And now that Elden Ring DLC's dropped, there are so many players that are now leaving so many negative reviews because they think the DLC is unfairly difficult. You either die a gamer or live long enough to see yourself become a journalist.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Now there's people just fucking moaning about it being too difficult and being upset about it.
I will say, I am the type of guy to do that while I'm playing the game. But it's like a shrug off, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever, this game's shit, you know? It's like a nice little fallback, you know, like, what, you die because you got caught in a combo? Great sword users. Game shit, you know? Oh, boss pulled out some shit and you feel like you didn't get hit by it. Game shit, you know? Fucking, you get cheese in like a combo or something and you can't roll out of it. Game shit. You know what I'm saying? Some AoE comes up on the ground, but your character's on the ground too and he doesn't want to get up. Game shit. Get hit in a combo because your fucking flask takes 33 years to put back into your pocket because you gotta fucking slap the lid back on and factory seal that bitch tight. Game shit, right? But then when you kill the boss, then you're like, alright, this game's decent. I fuck with this game. I'm rocking with it, right? That's how it always goes. But there is genuine people out there who go, you know what, this game is so fucking shit. I'm gonna go on websites and leave negative reviews and do whatever I can to make sure nothing like this happens again. It's like, dude, get a fucking life.
Contrary to what some Twitter raid bait engagement is trying to lead you to believe, not every bad review of the DLC is about it being too difficult and like soiling their diaper about it. There are some legitimate complaints about it. Like a lot of people are citing performance problems, like a lot of issues with the DLC itself from the performance side of things. I haven't had any problems personally, but if that is something people are experiencing, that's a very legitimate.
I have only noticed frame rate. Like I've had 2 crashes in like the 35 hours. It's really not that bad. Like it's not enough for me to go out of my way to leave a negative review for. So again, I think the people who are doing that are fucking losers. Like pull the tampon out of your asshole. Yeah, that's how I feel about that. Like obviously there's some frame rate issues. Whatever, you can still fucking play the game. Shut the fuck up. Been waiting 2 years just to complain about the stupidest shit. Shut up. They're gonna come out with a patch. Everybody knows it. You know it. I know it. They're gonna come out with a patch. Stop your bitching. Put your pitchforks away. You're probably gonna need it for a mob later in the week.
Reason to leave a bad review. But there is a ton of people leaving bad reviews about the difficulty. That is actually true. It's just not all of them. There's so much to unpack here, and it's time for a little tough love. So, I am a huge fan of Souls games. My favorite genre of video game is Souls-like. I play all of them. Not just like the FromSoft games, but all games in this genre. So
Same.
Super stinkers like Lords of the Fallen.
I didn't play that one. I knew better.
I really love this genre of game. And Elden Ring is tied for my favorite Souls game in existence. It's tied with Bloodborne.
And the DLC, I think, is extremely good. It's not perfect. There are legitimate complaints to have about it.
There are.
But one of them...
And I'm gonna make a video later about my overall thoughts, and then I'm gonna tier list bosses. It's gonna be a 2-in-1 video. But I agree. Overall, it's a fantastic DLC. It is. And the people hating can honestly suck my dick. Because I think they're just fucking... Again, a lot of them are crybabies. But the other thing is a lot of people are just... Like, to the people who are, like, just genuinely, like, this feels, like, a lot harder. Like, it's out of ignorance of not knowing what's actually going on in front of them. It's the scaling. It's literally just the scaling. Like, I don't know why nobody realizes this, and it's blowing my fucking brain. It's the scaling, bro. The scaling is distinctly different. And the reason why is because when you start dumping into, like, something particular, like, for example, I walked into the DLC and I had 70 strength. Okay, now my character has 95 and I have 15 Erdtree blessings. Now I'm hitting hard on enemies like I was at the end of the base game in Elden Ring. But enemies are just hitting me like a freight train and it doesn't matter what they throw. That is a clear indication that it is scaling. So a great test would be to, like, up your endurance / like your main stat to the highest regard and then play around with it from there. Because I guarantee you, if your endurance is like 99 and you have like 99 strength and you have like 70 vigor, you're tanking literally everything. Like, and you have the max Erdtree blessings. So all I'm saying is it's not based off of the design. Like, it's based off of the scaling. And I think that's the most important thing to take away from this. Broke Vampire Survivors, 200 kills, 200k kills is Red Death. Holy shit, dude. I haven't played that game in a minute. I gotta hop back on that.
This fucking DLC comes with built-in training wheels should you choose to activate them with the Erdtree fragments. As you collect these throughout the world, you'll get a boost to your offensive and defensive capabilities, serving as a permanent boost to DLC damage dealt and negation. So if you're tired of banging your head against the wall, getting your butt cheeks blasted by whatever boss you're stuck on, make like Marco Polo and explore the land collecting these sacred Dragon Balls here so that way you can have an easier time with the bosses. Or you could subscribe to the ancient belief system and just get good. Just be better. Elden Ring is also a game, really every Souls game, has always been a series really, where it's as difficult as you make it. There are broken builds that you can use, especially in Elden Ring.
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, if we're gonna be honest, I don't like. I'm gonna argue with Charlie on this point here. I don't think bosses should exist that make someone change their entire fucking build. Like, I don't. For example, with, like, the Falling Star Beast boss, I think that is, like, a clear roadblock. Now, the only reason why I've never really brought it up is because it's not a roadblock. Like, you can complete the game without even ever fighting one. But I think, right? You don't ever have to go to Volcano Manor. I don't think so. So, that boss particularly pisses me off because while you can beat it using melee weapons and whatnot, it is extremely difficult. I beat it using Zweihander, and it was miserable. They could have easily put, like, a summon down there where it's like, he's like a sorcerer. Because the Falling Star Beast is weak to magic. So it at least would have been able to chip it down to like half. And then people who are melee users would be able to get it down from there. That's like one example where I think... And you could say that they don't have to do that, and that's fine. But I think inherently, that made the boss fight a lot worse in some people's eyes. Especially for melee users. Like, I've never seen anyone ever go, oh, Falling Star Beast was such a fantastic fight. I love that fight so much. Right? And it's like, this all matters, especially from a business perspective, because if you come out with a game like Sekiro, where almost every single main story boss in the game is a fucking S tier, that leaves a superior taste in the consumer's mouth. Right? That's how, like, Sekiro, you look at any of the games, Sekiro and Bloodborne have the biggest cult fan base, and it's for a reason. Right? Like, the game left such a good impression and taste in people's mouth that they remember it forever. And, like, having a star-studded boss lineup that are well and thoroughly designed is the most important part. At least in my opinion.
There's full-blown mechanics that are there to help you through difficult challenges. With summoning, you can just use a mimic tier to help you.
So, along with that, if there is a boss that is so badly scaled that I feel like I have to use a summon because of, like, the damage negation difference, like, I'm curious if when I walked into the DLC, how many scatter tree blessings that I would need to, like, actually feel like I'm doing sufficient damage. And like I said, I know my build isn't bad because I beat the entire fucking game with it easily. So I know it's not bad. And it didn't get nerfed or any. I wasn't doing no jumping attacks or shit like that. It just, the scaling was fucking me over hard.
To get through a boss, you don't have to go summonless. Like, if you're struggling to a point that you're about to cast self-destruct like Voltor and leave an incendiary negative review on Steam because you can't beat the dancing lion, just use a fucking summon. You aren't good enough to do it without clearly, and what are you trying to prove anyway? Just use a summon, get through the boss, and enjoy the game. Like, it's not like you're out here trying to prove yourself as a man or whatever. Just use a summon in that case. Like, I saw so many reviews saying, like, I refuse to...
Well, there's a... This comes probably more so from the core of the fan base. This particular whole situation with the summons, because I've been reading about this too. People are mad that they got to use summons. I personally don't like bosses that are scaled to the point where I feel like I have to. I didn't think any of them mechanic-wise or gameplay-wise, I guess gameplay-wise kind of half because it is partly scaling, but at least mechanics-wise that were so tough that I felt like I had to use a summon. It just came down to the scaling, because there were quite a few bosses that I didn't even use one for. But I mean, ultimately, like, that whole thing with the summons comes from the core community that played through Dark Souls. Because, really, you had some summons here and there, but altogether you really didn't. And when you got to those fights that you didn't have summons for, it made you learn the game a lot better. Like, every time you left a boss fight, you felt better at the game than when you walked into it. And it was like a for sure thing. So, I think it comes from that, and I think it stems from that. Like, I think when people play these games, they get into a mode where, like, dying is okay, because in a lot of games, dying isn't okay. Dying hurts you. And I think it works a little bit differently in this game. So that's at least where it comes from, and that's why people are doing that. It's not like it could partly be a natural instinct, but I think more so than anything, you know, people are trained to at least go into the games like this mentally.
Summon, but I also can't beat any of these enemies, so this DLC fucking sucks. It's poorly designed. No, you're just trash. Like, you're just trash, and you're not able to reach the challenge you've set for yourself. So, how about instead of blaming the DLC for your shortcoming, just use a summon, go grab some scatter tree fragments, and enjoy it. Like, this doesn't need to be some kind
I agree with him, though. Like, on this part, I agree with him. Overall, like, you shouldn't let the difficulty hold you back from enjoying the game. And if you using a summon to beat the boss will allow you to enjoy the game better, then do it. Like, I had a strict no summon thing going into the DLC, and I very shortly realized that I needed to use a summon because my damage was just not sufficient enough. Like, I know that I can't perfectly roll and dodge and evade every single attack that gets thrown my way, especially when not even 80% of the attacks that get thrown at you do half of your health to one-shot you. Like, that becomes a problem. So I think if you're literally holding yourself back from enjoying the proper experience because of your ego, then that becomes a problem you have to solve with yourself.
Torturous struggle. You're not held captive at Guantanamo Bay, forced to do a level.
Here he goes with his references.
Elden Ring DLC.
Fucking Charlie.
It's supposed
God damn
to
it.
be fun. And it is. It is difficult, but that's always been one of the big selling points of Souls games, that they're challenging. And people used to, again, spit on those that would insult the series for being hard. And now with this one, somehow the prevalent discussion has been about how it's
I would like to point out here, because I don't understand it. Why is that the selling point of these games? Like, it's not something. How do I put this? It's not something that stands out at the top of the list for me. It's really not. Like, if I was advertising these games, I would show off three things. I would show off the story / lore, the combat, and I would show off the exploration. I think boss design is right down here. But yeah, I would show off, because I mean, the top thing to me is the art in these games. But the art says something for itself no matter what else you look at, so you're gonna see that. So I would do story, combat, and exploration. Like, if we're talking combat, these games easily have the best combat of all time ever. Like, it's not even a question. In fact, whenever I get done with this, I'm gonna, like, just offline go explore some more in the DLC. Like, that's how good the exploration is in these games. And then the story is so deep. You could go watch a 12-hour lore video, and it'll be a part 1 of 8. I mean, you could probably write a 3,000-page novel on the entirety of these game stories. So, you know, it's just like, I don't ever understand why the difficulty has been the highlight for a lot of people.
hard, and they've gone too far this time. It's not just Steam reviews. I've actually seen streamers saying the same thing, which is, it's blowing my mind. Like, I actually am shocked that we're at this point where everything needs to be so hand-holdy that now, if you can't complete your challenge run of Elden Ring because the DLC is a little more brutal than what you're used to, it's the game's fault, and From Software fucked up. It's stupid. It's really stupid. There is built-in systems here to make it easier for you. You can also use sorcery or something. Use fucking buffs. Use summons. Like, there's so many options for you to get through this DLC, and just because you're struggling to get through it with a challenge you've set for yourself isn't the DLC's fault. There are real criticisms for it, though. For instance, I'm going through this DLC and I play all of Souls games summonless. I like to have it at the most optimal challenge imaginable, because that's the most fun for me in these kind of games. So I've been doing a punch-only build, and I've switched it to a punch and kick-only build now with martial arts, and it's been extremely challenging and extremely rewarding. However, there have been 2 bosses so far that are actually not well made. One of them is Commander Guy's Hog Rider. Hog Rider has 2 moves that come out where the hitboxes don't match the animations. So his charge, if you dodge it perfectly, sometimes you will still take the full impact, which often one-taps you. And also his, like, I don't even know what to call this move, but where he, like, flails around randomly and, like, fucking throws his head around.
I have yet to fight this guy.
Bullet for my Valentine.
Which, it's actually funny he's talking about it. I literally have it right here. Because I was looking up the remembrance bosses I need. Him and Matter Mothers of Fingers are the last 2, other than the final boss.
Concert from 2006. That move will hit you pretty much anywhere unless you're in his bundle. So anything aside from his colon, you're still going to take damage from, even if you do roll it right, at least most of the time. and then the other boss that has one bad set of moves is Mesmer. I actually really like Mesmer. I think he's a very, very, very cool boss.
Oh yeah,
7 tries. So far that is the boss.
dude. Like the bosses in the DLC are so fucking cool. They are so cool. I mean, my worry was that they weren't gonna have the variation that they did with some of the bosses in Elden Ring. Like, as far as atmosphere and as far as design and shit like that, but they knocked it out the park. I keep falling back on this pillow, and I will, dude, as long as they keep putting it under me. It's the scaling, man.
The most amount of tries in all of Elden Ring on my punch only.
I think the scaling on some of the attacks and some of the bosses is crazy.
His phase 2, he summons.
Oh, come on, dude. Really, Valorant? I ain't playing your game, bro.
Snakes. The snake's hitboxes are so fucking janky. The snake hitboxes actually are
Yeah.
almost non-functional. Sometimes
I'm pretty sure Queso almost raged off the game playing
what you're seeing
that
is
boss.
not what you're experiencing. Like the snake will completely fucking miss you, but then you'll still get hit sometimes. So
Shout out
there's
Queso, by the way.
So there is some jankiness to it that you can criticize. But to be leaving such terrible reviews only because it's difficult is absolutely
Insane.
That shit
Yeah.
is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
One of the best DLC I've played. FromSoft, I think, has always crushed it with their DLC, and this one's no exception.
Yes.
I don't think their best DLC. I still like Bloodborne's DLC the most, but I really, really appreciate this. This is the biggest DLC.
It's hard because it's like the sheer size of it, just like the amount of content that came with it is just so much bigger than anything else I played from him that it's like hard to beat it. Like it really is. So I don't know. It's like I would say it's probably the best DLC they made. But the problem is like yeah, I mean it has in my opinion it has probably the best boss they've ever made. But Ring City, it comes very close. Ring City that was a very, very, very good DLC. But I think for size, par for par, I'd probably go to Shadow of the Erdtree.
DLC I've ever played. I'm not a big DLC guy. I'd rather just get another game down the line as opposed to like a little snack of something I already enjoyed. I'd rather just get something else later that's bigger. But this DLC, I've already pumped like 15, 16 hours in, and I still haven't finished. I'm loving it. It's huge. It really does feel almost like an Elden Ring 1.5. Like it's that big. It has
Yeah.
so much meat on its bones. The girth is impressive, and the music is beautiful. I love the new area. I love almost all of the new bosses, except here's a criticism that I think some people might not agree with. I'm pretty upset with how many bosses are mounted. I've already fought so many mounted bosses, and I think mounted enemies are kind of the lamest. Because the movesets are pretty derivative, like they're pretty similar. And I
Yeah.
just don't really like the way mounted enemies fight, because usually it's a spam these couple of moves, then run away, and you're forced to kind of chase them for the punish window, as opposed to getting a punish right after the moves. You kind of chase them to get a little punish.
I can see that criticism. I can see that criticism for sure. For me, it's dragons. I think they got a little spammy with the dragons. Maybe it's just because I've been spending too much time in the south part of the map. But I feel like there's there's a shitload of dragons. Let me correct myself. There's a shitload of big ass enemies that take up the entire screen. Yeah, they're still having a tough time, and it's weird because like Radon in the main game, like the first time you fight him, it feels like he takes up so much of the screen. And then the second time you go around, you're like, oh, okay, it's not too bad. So they have been able to make bosses that don't take up the entire screen. But it's just, it's insane, dude. Like, in the DLC, there are so many bosses where you just, I felt like constantly, I'm like, I can't see, like, at all what the fuck is going on. That's how it is, man.
And I don't really like that much, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. I've been really loving the DLC, but absolutely hating the conversation around it in regards to the difficulty of it. I don't think it's too hard, but I have always said that the challenge of the Souls-like genre is something that's always going
By the
to be
way,
included.
the last boss is for sure gonna get nerfed. There's no way it doesn't. I would be genuinely shocked if they don't do something about it. Just because of how many people will bitch when they get there.
Like, if it's just not your cup of tea, that's totally fine to just say, like, hey, I don't really like the challenge of this, so it's not for me. That I have always understood, and I've mentioned that before in voice meters for previous Souls games. It is just very understandable to not want a really big challenge. But for the Elden Ring DLC, these aren't just the normal, casual players coming in out of nowhere. The only way you get to the DLC is if you've already done a lot in the base game. So you should already be familiar.
I'm gonna be honest though. Difficulty wise, I think a lot of the base game bosses are not even comparable to the DLC. There's let me think about that. Melania is still probably Millennia is probably still tied for hardest boss in the game. Right now, at least. No. No, I think she just got actually beat. Yeah, she just got beat. But I would say every other boss in every other boss in the DLC. No, there's a few. I would say there's like 3 or 4 that are harder than every other boss in the main game. So I feel like there's a decent amount of combat-wise difficulty, but it's not anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, Melania is up there. So aside from the boss that just knocked the crown off of her, she is still a far gap between the ones below her, which are in the DLC. So it's not like as intimidating as it sounds, but they still are harder than the base game bosses. Like, Malekith is still up there, at least for me. Like, Phase 2, he's definitely up there. Like, I feel like if they made that Phase 1 and then they made Phase 2 like a cracked out version of that, he'd for sure be the hardest boss in the game. So he's still up there, at least for that Phase 2. But I mean, aside from him, it's a battle between like 3 or 4 of the DLC ones for sure.
The challenge Elden Ring presents. Thus, going into the DLC, I really think you should have come in with the understanding that it's going to be hard. It should be hard. If it was anything less than difficult, it'd be very disappointing and a far cry from what made this genre so special in the first place. And I don't think they've done anything, nefarious with the scaling of the difficulty here. It's not too hard. You're making it harder on yourself by not collecting the material they put in here to make it easier.
Yeah.
Or not using certain mechanics to make it
There's also a level of exploration that gets blocked off by certain bosses. You know what I'm saying? To get into certain zones and whatnot. So that part is kind of tough. But there is still stuff you can do and always do to get past your roadblocks. So whether it's, you got to start sometimes at the core. You look in your inventory, you have absolutely nothing. Okay, you go to your weapons tab. You see a weapon that someone made a video about 2 months ago that had like a super broken OP like magic build, and you're sitting there with 2 katanas, right? You go to your inventory, you don't have a tier. Alright, now you have step 1. Now you have to go on Google, and you have to type in where can I find a fucking, whatever it is to reroll. Find one of those, boom. You go get the required stats. Alright, now what? I look at my inventory, I don't got smithing stones. Alright, now I gotta go get smithing stones. So now you go buy smith, you gotta level up the weapon, right? Then you gotta go find armor that like benefits your build, stack out the talismans, right? Then you run all the way back to the boss, and you eat a bag of dicks. You don't do nothing, and you just die. That is why people say that it's too hard. That right there. Because people don't want to put the time and investment to like figure out different shit. And I know because it's a lot of stubbornness that like I share too. Like I don't like changing my build for difficulty. Like I just like finding cheap ass ways to like get around it with the same build that I have on. And in very rare circumstances I change my build. But I mean that's a lot of people. You know, that's like they've stuck with one build. It did them so well the entire time. You know, like rivers of blood users. And then they're getting up to this last boss and they're like, oh shit. They're like, oh fuck. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting scaling decision for sure. It's sometimes you really gotta ask yourself, like, am I dog shit or is this actually fucking hard? Like hard.
Summoning or sorceries or really strong weapons that have really good abilities. Like there are so many options that you can use here to help you through the challenging portions of this game. And you can't start pointing the fucking finger at the game itself just because you're refusing to do those things because you think it's beneath you or something, or maybe it's shameful. I don't really know. But it's not the DLC's fault that you want to go through the game in the most difficult way imaginable.
I mean, that's, yeah.
When you have all the power in the world not to, you can just use something better or go get the Erdtree fragments. Like, you have so many options.
Yeah.
So I really think it's a very weak reason to be, leaving such terrible reviews of the DLC. Like I said, there are real reasons not to like it. Like it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. A lot of reviews I've seen point to performance problems. I haven't had any performance problems, but if that is a prevalent issue with the DLC, then that's something that does make sense too. Like that would be a reason to leave a negative review. Nothing wrong with that.
I mean,
it's just.
Yeah, but we gotta ask ourselves, like, what are these performance issues? Because it's like, oh, I'm dropping frame rate. It's like, dude, they're gonna fix that. Like, you don't think they're gonna fix that? Which, now let me say this. If they don't have a support page where they can, like, contact, like, support or, like, leave... You know what I'm saying? Like bug fixes or whatnot. Then that's a whole different story. Then they're leaving reviews like that so the devs see it and get it fixed. But it would just be hard to believe that they don't have a system like that.
Calling it too difficult is so silly. I can't believe we've reached this point now. It's very interesting to see. That's about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I also saw that Asmon made a video about it too. So I'm curious what he has to say. We'll kind of skip and cut through this and see what the hell's going on with it. Oh, he's watching a video.
A quote from none other than Hidetaka Miyazaki.
Elden Ring gets mixed reviews. Elden Ring creator Talk Shadow the Erdtree.
Miyazaki set the challenge target for players who have tackled a majority of the base game. which quote means we have kind of really pushed the envelope in terms of what we think can be withstood by the player.
Well, that's an interesting way of putting it, because they definitely did. That fucking last boss is... So, yeah, I'm gonna watch this a little bit off stream and get a better idea more of what everyone's consensus is. But I watched a little bit of his stream today, and he was talking about a tad bit of what he thought about the difficulty. And I've been hearing, like I've been watching Kai play it. I've just been seeing a lot of people, talk about it, and I don't know, man. Like, I think genuinely people are on kind of a right note, but they don't know exactly where to put their finger. It's like, it is difficult, but it's not too hard because of difficulty and, like, mechanic. It's because of, like I said, dude, there's certain attacks where if they were on any other boss in the base game, they would not do nearly as much damage. Like, I'm talking about like swift, like, combos where, like, there's a big charged attack, but the little attacks leading up to the charge attack do so much damage that, like, the charge attack damage won't even matter, like, if it hits you. So it's like, I don't know, bro. There's something with the damage that enemies can do to you, and it might be that you need, like, all 20 of the scatter tree blessings and, like, high endurance to, like, really be decent as far as survivability. But I don't know. Some of the attacks really hit like trucks, dude. It's crazy. So that's my take on it. I'm gonna, whenever I get through the full DLC, I'm gonna do like my thoughts and then a tier list, and I'm gonna wait until a majority of people have probably played through it. That way, and I'll obviously do like a spoiler warning and whatnot. But yeah, I'm gonna go get some sleep. I'm tired as fuck. It's been your boy Crusading, aka James. If you enjoyed, leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that bell so you know when I